guys remember Jeff Foxworthy, the comedian back in the 90s, who was really, really popular? And he did, you might be a redneck if you open up your cupboard and you get hit in the head with a bunch of Cool Whip containers, you might be a redneck. Or here's your sign. You know, he wasn't the first one to come up with here's your sign. It was actually in the book of Daniel. And I thought we would talk about that today and relate it to today's history. And it's called The Writing on the Wall. So to kind of set the stage, in Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar was king for a long period of time. Although he was never a Christian, never believed that God was the God Almighty, he believed in God enough that God scared the bejesus out of him from time to time. And so he tried not to cross the line with God very often. But after he died, his son took over. His name was Belshazzar, King Belshazzar. He gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. While he was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. That was a no-no. They went into the temple in Jerusalem and took holy artifacts, and they should have never done that. But Nebuchadnezzar had put them away, and his son was now saying, go get them. So that he and his wives and his concubines might drink from them. So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines drank from them out of holy artifacts, goblets. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver and bronze, iron, wood, and stone. So they're praising idols, right, while they're drinking out of holy goblets. And right outside of Babylon are the Persians, just ready to attack. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall. The king watched the hand as it wrote. Now, if that wouldn't freak you out, I don't know. All of a sudden you see a hand writing with no arm. His face turned pale and he was frightened, and his legs became weak and his knees started knocking. The king summoned all of his enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. And then he said to these wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom. Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face grew even more pale, and his nobles were baffled. So what did he do then? What was the problem there? He had surrounded himself with the wrong people. He thought all of these astrologers and witches and diviners could tell him exactly what was on that wall, what it meant, and they couldn't, right? They weren't the right people. Are you surrounding yourself with the right people? Is our president surrounding himself with the right people? Are they able to read the writing on the wall? And are you? The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his nobles, came into the banquet hall. May the king live forever, she said. Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. He did this because Daniel was found to have keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams. explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel. He will tell you what the writing means. So I encourage you guys to read about Daniel and King Nebuchadnezzar. That story is also very interesting. And Daniel was offered all kinds of things after he was able to interpret dreams. But he did it with an understanding and his faith in God, not with witchcraft. He would not take the gifts. So Daniel was brought before the king, and the king said to him, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard the Spirit of God is in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom. The wise men and enchanters were brought before me to read this writing and tell me what it means, but they could not explain it. Now I have heard that you are able to give interpretations and to solve difficult problems. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, you will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck, and you will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Daniel answered the king, "You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I'll read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. Your Majesty, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor. Because of the high position he gave him, all the nations and peoples of every language dreaded and feared him. Those that the king wanted put to death, he put to death. Those he wanted to spare, he spared. And those he wanted to promote, he promoted. Those he wanted to humble, he humbled. But when his heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven away from people and given the mind of an animal. He lived with wild donkeys and ate grass like an ox, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven, until he acknowledged that the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and sets over them anyone he wishes." But you knew all of this. You knew all of this that happened to your father. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives, and your concubines drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Therefore, he sent a hand with this inscription. You know, are you putting another God before our God Almighty? Are you worshiping something that can't help you? Are you worshiping something that can't give you a better life or a promise for tomorrow? And by that I mean, are you worshiping like climate change? Are you worshiping the LGBTQ movement? Are you worshiping socialism? What is it that you're worshiping that can bring no worth to you whatsoever? You need to rethink those things that you worship. This is what was written. Mene, Tekel, Peresian. And this is what the words mean. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and has brought it to an end. Now, don't you think that would have scared the pee-wadding out of you? God has numbered your days and he's bringing it to an end. Tekel, you have weighed on the scales and you have been found wanting. So in other words, you've not measured up. Peresian, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple, a gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. And that very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain, and Darius the Mede took over his kingdom at the age of 62. Cyrus the Great, the king of Medo-Persia, had broke through Babylon, which was considered impenetrable, by flowing in through the rivers and underneath in the canals that went into Babylon. So here you are having a party, drinking, drunk, carrying on, ha ha ha, you know, doing things that you shouldn't do. And a hand comes up and writes on the wall. It's right there in front of you. Here's your sign. Here's your sign. Here is what's going to happen. Choose not to ignore it. This is what's going to happen. And I think with all of those things that I brought up at the beginning of this video, with division in our country, corruption in our country, we don't know what China has over us as far as our leadership. We don't know what these other countries are planning for us as we weaken our own defense. But I think the writing's on the wall, isn't it? We have a pretty good idea of what could come. And you can't ignore it. And you know, something else I saw today, I had read in the past day or so that was really sad, is less than 50% of people in the United States now even believe in God. Less than 50%. So no wonder we're seeing so much drug use, so much depression, so much feeling of hopelessness, not caring for each other, you know, beating people up and not even caring about how they feel, robbing from others, all of these things that are going on. Like Billy Graham's son gave a speech this week, and he said, every kind of evil is in the United States now, and I totally believe it. And so, you know, what can we do about it? And what does this writing on the wall have to do with us, right? Because we could be sitting here at home saying, well, what can I do about it? I'm not in a position of leadership, but we do still have the power of the vote. And we do still have the power to watchdog and make sure that we hold people accountable for corruption. And we can still tell people about our faith in God. And we can still relate our stories about how God has changed us and given us hope for the future. And we can still work hard on our homesteads and still stock up and still prepare and still try to plan a future for ourselves. But we have to be, the days of being mealy-mouthed and the days of being passive are over, folks. Here's your sign. Wake up. And if you don't like where things are now, let's do something about it, okay? Let's do something about it. So thanks for joining me this week, you guys, and letting me get out my political rant that I haven't done in a long time. Pass over it if you don't like that kind of thing. But leave me a comment if you liked the story about Daniel and you have something to say. All opinions are welcome as long as they are put in a respectful manner. Okay, I got my potatoes cut. This is called chitting, by the way. And so now I'm going to leave these out for about a week. I need to let this cut side get hard, okay? So that when it goes in the ground, it's less susceptible for disease and fungus. So we're going to let it, just like you let your plants harden before you put them out in the garden, you know, so they can withstand the weather. You have to do the same for your titers. Yes, you do. You guys, thank you so much for joining me. Once again, I want to say welcome to my new subscribers. I have the sweetest subscribers, and they leave the sweetest comments, and they worry about me. Don't worry about me, guys. I'm doing great. And I hope you all have a great week and enjoy the sunshine and be diligent.